Hey Nina,
Hello, how are
how
you?
how are you today?
I'm doing okay. Um, I am doing my best not um, to not judge how good or bad a day is based on productivity, and that's very difficult for me because I enjoy being productive, and I am a little bit of a workaholic and a crazy creative. So yeah, but good day nonetheless.
So is that sort of like a mantra that you've been working with lately?
Um, well, I it's just something that's come to my attention. So I, have long had trouble giving myself space to rest and to like not do things and to have downtime. It's something that I struggle to understand. Just the concept of downtime and not doing things. And so that's something that I've been working on for a really long time of like, how do I intentionally have time where I'm not doing something or not, you know, even just preparing for something else. And then it's come to my attention recently. I read something, it's from the NAP ministry. If you don't follow them yet, check into it. Where they basically said, we are not resting in order to be more productive later. And that just upended everything for me because it's like, well, then why are we what are we doing? So, yeah.
Cool. Um, that got me excited because later I'm going to ask you about your sun moon rising. So I'm already like, ooh, I wonder what notes those were.
We already know one of them at this point.
I certainly have a guess, and I do know one of them for sure. And also, I always have like one thing that I'm working on at a time too. So mine for the whole pandemic has been you can't control other people.
Mm,
That's that's the
release.
one, like I just keep coming back to it all the time, but it helps me a lot in the moment to just like identify that quickly.
Mhm. Truly have very little control in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one though.
I think like the masks alone have been such a challenge, you know, like trying to control other people and how they're wearing their masks, or that's something I would hear a lot in the beginning of the pandemic. Like people get so upset about folks not wearing their mask in the right place.
Mm, like, what's even the point if you're not wearing it properly?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like you all you can control is yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and hope that you are setting an example, or providing people, um, with with the right information, those kinds of things. I've
Yeah.
had a lot of that kind of pressed on me, particularly in like context of the pandemic, of like one, the psychology of not being able to shame people into things that there's this like in like you're psychologically people are more likely to dig in their heels against things, right? And then also, these just the idea of being able of like, I guess, setting a good example kind of, and maybe that's like the, older sister thing of me. I'm a firstborn. Um, that I feel like I have a responsibility to that a little bit, and like I have a very small platform, but the people that do there are a lot of people that do look to me, for advice on all numbers of things. But specifically, I've had people ask me like, do you think this is safe? Or do you think that this is like a good idea? People who have asked me about, things that they're considering doing, or like whether or not they should go on vacation. And I'm not 100% sure how I ended up with that level of trust with a lot of people. But it's there, and I feel very responsible for it,
Mhm.
to keep myself informed on a lot of different issues, and making sure that I'm giving people accurate information, those sorts of things. But um, it's a strange responsibility.
So you're leading by example.
I try. I mean, you know, but the most I can do is be myself and be live my life like loudly enough that people can see what I'm doing. And, if it resonates with them, then that's great,
Mm,
um,
that's really beautiful.
thank you.
Yeah. And, when you live your life loudly, like you're ultimately finding your people.
Yes. And that's been another piece for me of, um, I feel like this has been for a lot of people this past year, is kind of the shift of realizing some people you thought were your people might not be your people. Um, and the grief that comes along with that, right? The loss of that. Also the joy of finding new people, or even people that that you had lost touch with maybe, and like reconnected with, things like that. I've found that most of my friends like aren't even necessarily people that are like geographically closest to me, right?
Mhm.
So that's been really interesting. And then also just like like I think that the past year, everything that came along with it has led to a lot of questioning of like, am I living the way that I want to live? Am I in the job that I want to be in? Am I in the relationship that I want to be in? Am I at the stage of my life that I want to be in? And I've seen so many people shift to this, to make really big shifts in who they are in the past year, and it's been really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I really feel you on that. Like, for me, during this pandemic, like Matt and I decided to make the move to Asheville. And in doing that, we took 7 carloads to Goodwill,
Oof.
like like chock full.
Wow.
We sold most of our furniture too, you know,
Mhm.
and it became like the big question of like what gets to come with.
Mm. Mhm.
And we moved here on November 11th.
Oh.
So it was like that 11/11 portal. And
Mhm.
I feel like we chose each other when we went through that portal together.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that.
So I was hoping you could tell everyone how we know each other. And I don't know if you remember, if I remember.
I do remember. I remember how we met. Um, well, how how detailed do you want me to be about this story?
I'm an open book, so you won't embarrass me or anything like that.
All right, great. Well, the first time that I remember meeting you, I was working at Tulip Toy Gallery in Chicago, Wicker Park, which is, for those of you who are not Chicagoans, a sex toy shop, a really beautiful sex toy shop, one that was femme-owned and run, and just it was a really, really great shop when I worked there. And I often worked alone, because, tiny storefront type place in Chicago. And Adrian came in. I don't know if you came in alone the first time or if you had friends with you. I know that you came in at least twice that I was working. But I do remember one time that you came in and you were specifically looking for you're looking for a vibrator. And something that we talked about was you being an opera singer. And I proposed a vibrator that reacted to sound, so that you could practice singing, and orgasming at the same time. I was very proud of that recommendation. But I do remember you coming in another time with friends too. But I remember us meeting there, and we had a couple different conversations, and eventually did talk a little bit about burlesque. And I had been working with a burlesque company in Chicago called Vodzilla. And then, like, we, I don't know if we talked about that afterwards. Like, how do we run in? I don't remember how we reconnected, except that I remember seeing you at Vodzilla. So your turn.
I think I remember. Okay, first of all, I didn't remember the vibrator, so I'm like, you remember more details than I did. um, Okay, so you told me about Annie and you were like, oh, she's like always looking to book like weird things. And I was like, I have this idea. I want to like combine opera and burlesque. Is that a thing? I don't know, and you were like, you should go for it. So I think that when we reconnected, I think we were kittening.
Okay. I love that. Yeah, I do remember actually seeing you backstage um at I think stage 773 maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh no, no, no. It was oh gosh, what was the punk rock bar?
Oh, Exit?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes.
Like there was a bunch of different burlesque bars at the time. I really miss that.
Yeah. I remember vixening there with you. So if anyone doesn't know what vixening is, it might be a lost art form if everything's digital. But we used to pick up other performers' clothes for them because, when you're grand and important performer, you don't pick up your own clothes. So we were there to pick them up for you.
We were essentially really hot stagehands.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like a cool way to get in and see what performers were doing, kind of like find what you want to do yourself as a performer.
And also, the thing that I really miss about vixening that I think kind of got lost whenever burlesque super started to move to the stage, because there used to be just like a lot of bar shows, and Vadzilla especially did bar shows at Exit, did bar shows at
Lincoln Tab.
yeah, Lincoln Tap and Blue Bayou, where we
Mhm.
did bar top burlesque and all of that stuff. And one of the jobs that I loved the most was going around and asking for tips, because essentially that just meant me walking around and flirting with people all night, you know, and like, cozying up to people at the bar with like, a top hat and being like, didn't you love that act? Don't you want to like tip? And, basically getting to flirt all night long and have people buy me drinks and, was great.
Yeah, that was such a fun time. And also for people who don't know, that was 2011. That's how far we go back.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah, because
crazy.
I was in college whenever I was working at Tulip.
Oh my gosh. I didn't
That was my
realize
that was my college job.
that's a good college job.
Yeah, especially because we were open on Sunday mornings for some crazy reason, and that was a great time to do all of my homework, like there at work,
Oh
because
wow.
nobody is, shopping for sex toys on Sunday morning.
So I see you as a jack of all trades, and I was wondering if you could tell us some of the hats that you've been wearing lately.
Whew. Well, okay. That's an accurate description of me. I have had a very fun career. I don't know if career is even the right word, because until recently I hadn't really been able to connect the dots as to like all of the different industries and like jobs that I've done. But the more that I've looked at them and the more that I've thought about the things that I really enjoy, from being a burlesque performer to selling sex toys, to being a graphic designer and a props and scenic designer and a silhouette artist and all of these different things, and there's way more in between, weird things that I've done, that they all kind of funneled back down to me really really liking to create create and hold intimate space for people, and giving people a safe place to be vulnerable. And whether that has been, talking to somebody about their extremely specific opera singing orgasm needs, to creating, a literal world for theater. Um, it always kind of comes back around to that, to this like really, to give people this like this space, to hold space for people. um, and so recently, that has looked a lot like, um, me still doing some theater work, but all remotely, and mostly for theater that becomes, that's done on screen. I'm still designing props, and I'm still doing some set design stuff here and there. I've been building a lot of puppets for theater recently. So that's been really cool. But they've all the theater companies that I have worked with recently have all been extremely social justice related, or youth programs, or a combination of both. And it's been really cool to help people kind of express these things of themselves. A lot of like new and devised works coming up that way. I'm also the host of a show for Atlas Obscura called Nina Nightingale's Charm School, and it happens once a month. And I talk about the history of a specific art form, and then I go through the basic steps and teach you how to do it, but with sort of modern recycled materials. So yeah, that's been my main job for the past year, which has been a really cool thing to get to do. And to be like a history and arts communicator, and to get to explore whatever random historic art form I happen to be interested in every month, and then get to share that with an audience has been awesome. And so yeah, I guess those are, as far as like, hats that pay me money, those are those hats. And yeah, other than that, learning how to be a person again post, or mid-pandemic, I guess. I've been, trying to see what I want that to look like. What do I want my world to look like moving forward? Because that is something that I do have a say in,
Yes, absolutely. I have to tell you, what a synchronicity. I just found out about Atlas Obscura about a month ago. I heard about it on the Witch Wave podcast. And I had like had that floating in my brain for a little while. And then just 2 days ago, I finally checked out their website.
Oh, well, you'll find me on there.
I had no idea. That is so cool. And that makes so much sense, because they also seem like folks who are creating intimate experiences for people.
Yeah, definitely. I've been a longtime fan of Atlas, because I love museums. I love history, and I just feel like there is so much to dive into personally, like every single history thing that you hear about, whether we're talking about, like boring government, like war history or whatever, like the stuff that we're taught in school, right? You can take that, and if you keep diving deeper, you will get down to people every single time, like they all comes down to a person or to a group of people, because it's easy to see structures instead of people, right? But it's like none of that exists without people. And so I really like diving in and finding out, okay, like for example, my next class, which is next week, is we're going to be talking about the history of felt, which can sound a little bit dry. Like, let's talk about the history of a random textile. But when you really start to dig into things like that, you start to find out about, cultural traditions. You start to find out like the reasons why people needed this kind of textile, or like what the happenstance was, how it was invented. You start to come upon like the different ways that people, meet these needs and turn it into customs, and there's just a lot of curious stuff that comes out of there, not to mention like the mishaps and like, sordid things that happen too.
Well, that class sounds super cool. And if anybody doesn't know Atlas Obscura, they should definitely check out their Instagram, website, and new podcast, which
Brand new podcast.
yeah, just last month, right? Or 2 months ago. Yeah, it's really enjoyable. They're only like 15-minute episodes. So Okay, so I wanted to ask you about your call to spirituality when you realize you're a spiritual person. If there's any words that you align with, you know that I call myself a witch, but I don't know if that's a word that you wear or something adjacent.
Um, all right. Well, without going too far deep into we could talk about this for 4 days. Um, but the short story version of it is that I grew up in the very religious South, um, and the proper Bible Belt. Like I was there, like in the Panhandle of Florida, in Escambia County, and they at least did hold. I'm pretty sure they probably still do hold the record for most churches per square mile. It's like in the Guinness Book of World Records. That's where I'm from. My family, being largely of Filipino descent, um, grew up Catholic, but most of my friends were Protestant in some form or fashion, mostly Southern Baptist, including my eventual partner. And and yeah, I was always kind of a person who liked to ask a lot of questions, who liked to press for more answers and to like understand things fully. I was maybe 12 or 13 whenever I asked to have a meeting with the head priest to ask him all of my questions that I had about Catholicism, even though I grew up in Sunday school and those kinds of things. And largely I had a really big problem with what I didn't know, to identify as capitalism at the time. And I didn't understand, like, if what we're learning here is to, like, help people and to give money away, then why are we spending money on this like $1 million building and like all of those things. So in my teens, I sort of got away from that because it just felt very hypocritical to me,
Mhm.
which caused some issues with my parents. you know um Basically, my dad was just like, it's really easy to just like go to church and not talk. Like, can you just do that? you know and so fast forward past all of that stuff, wherein i I know I said that this was going to be short, but that was long. Um, you're super patient. Thank you. Feel free to edit this.
I won't.
Um, feel free to edit this down. Everybody, you could just skip ahead like 3 minutes and you'll be fine. But yes, so um, in my early 20s, I had basically decided that I didn't like the mainstream church. And I started something else. And I basically joined forces with a former colleague of mine, and we were like, let's, people used to have tiny neighborhood churches. Like, what if we just did that? And what if on Sunday we took all of the money that we got from our quote unquote offerings and we bought food and we fed it to the homeless people under the overpass,
Mm.
Um, and that was, that felt better, that felt right. And we didn't actually have like a church service. It was more people sitting down, reading this book that was supposed to be our tentative beliefs, and then arguing about it, and it was like a bunch of people. Almost nobody who came to our quote unquote church identified as a Christian. It was mostly people who, for the most part, were you know, like agnostic or atheist or a completely different religion, who were like, you know what, we also want to talk about this and we want to argue about it and we want to dig into what we believe. And um and that was really great. Like, I was like, whether, regardless of whatever any of us believe, we're sitting here like talking about it, and then doing something positive with, this little tiny amount of money that we're raising, like maybe $100 a week, and then, going and taking it to Walmart and buying a bunch of, food, and then literally taking it to people under the overpass. And then as that year went by, we were offered money from a church that was closing. They were basically splitting up, and because they were I don't know how I got this far down this rabbit hole, but because they were splitting up. I think I've been needing to tell this story, so hi. And they were basically, because they were a nonprofit, they had to give their money to another organization, and they basically had heard about us and saw what we were doing and said, if you guys get all of your paperwork in order, we will give you this money. And so we did. We got, our like nonprofit status and all that stuff, and ended up getting a building, which eventually became a coffee shop and a music venue. And that's what I did for about a year, where I was about to move to Chicago. I had basically told everybody, hey, I'm moving to Chicago because I love Chicago and it looks cool and I want to go there. And I had intentions of like coming up here and opening a coffee shop. That was my weird, like 19-year-old dream. And whenever that money came into our hands, it was my colleague posed to me and said, do you want to move to Chicago, or do you want to bring a little bit of Chicago here? And I stayed and ran this coffee shop and ran this venue. And that's how I kind of got started doing graphic design and photography and stuff, largely for metal bands that toured through the South. And, we did that for a year until we also fell to the exact same shit that every church starts to fall to, which is conversations about money and how to spend it. And it fell apart beautifully, like just a beautiful, full of fireworks, complete shit show. And I moved to Chicago and said, fuck religion. I am not doing anything spiritual ever again. And swore that off, came here. And it has taken a really long time to come back from that, to come back from the sort of heartbreak of trying to subvert a religious system to accidentally rebuild it. And thus began kind of my journey into looking inward for my spiritual needs as opposed to outward. And I would say that my journey back to even being able to call myself a spiritual person has really only culminated in the past couple of years, in me looking for ways to almost like self-guide. It was like, I recognize that there's power. I recognize that there is energy. I can feel it. And I've always been able to feel it, and I can feel it in other people, and I can see it in other people. And they're being able to harness that energy and being able to concentrate that energy and being able to help other people to utilize that energy in ways that make us all like better neighbors and better communicators and, able to care for each other. It suddenly felt almost irresponsible to not acknowledge that, And so, yeah, it's been a very long process of like wading back in to being able to even accept to accept things that feel like they're part of a structure. So it took me a really long time to get used to things like tarot, or things that felt like prescribed ritual, because I am very like, I don't know, I guess I was burned pretty hard by religious structures, right? And so my biggest journey back has been in the past year, in trying to reconnect with with ancestral magic, and things that I was like, well, you know this is my own lineage, and the things that I am learning about my culture and my ancestors and what they did to harness their magic, that eventually leads to me, right? Like, these are things that are built over time, and things that are built from within, and not like some like hierarchy that was imposed upon something, right? And so digging into those rituals is something that's brought me here. And I know that was an extremely lengthy answer, so thank you.
Well, I am so honored to be able to even hold the space for that. And I appreciated and heard you when you said you felt like you needed to tell this story. So thank you for sharing that. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if there's other people who listen to this who resonate in some way with the words that you said.
And if any of you ever need a place to tell that story, to anybody to talk to, I'm sure that my information will be attached to this in some way or form.
Definitely. I'm going to ask you for your handle and stuff at the end. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Like I said, I really wouldn't be surprised if others resonate with at least parts of that. So you were starting to talk about your ancestors. So that seems like a really good place for us to talk about what we're hoping to do together next month. So I asked you to collaborate with me on the next Manifesting by the Moon. And do you want to tell everyone what you're going to be doing?
We are going to be hosting a meditative tea ceremony, and I am super excited about it.
What do you think a meditative tea ceremony will look like?
Well, it basically is a hyper attentive making of your tea, and appreciating every single moment, and infusing those moments with energy and intention. And I am super excited to lead everybody in these moments. And so over the past, I guess, couple of years, I have studied a lot about my own ancestors and their tea ceremonies, which was crazy to find out, because I think of tea ceremonies, I've always thought of like Chinese tea ceremonies and Japanese tea ceremonies, and didn't realize how many other cultures had really involved in spiritual tea ceremonies, including my own ancestors. And so being able to study that has been really beautiful. I also, a couple of years ago, got my certification as a yoga nidra instructor and meditation guide. And so I'll be using some of that during our meditation tea ceremony. And then what is really beautiful about it is that this larger tea ceremony that we'll be doing, I'm going to talk to you about how you can take that energy and almost like truncate it, so that every time you make tea throughout your week, throughout your, just randomly making it in the middle of the day at work, how that becomes like a mini meditative tea ceremony for you.
Oh, that sounds so good. I'm really excited for this. So It's coming up on June 11th. It's going to be a Friday night. And so it's actually a solar eclipse. So I don't usually run the manifesting ceremonies on the solar eclipses or on an eclipse because the energy is supposed to be really wild. So as I like to say, like if chaos magic is your thing, awesome, go for it. But like whatever you're putting out there could just be completely wild. So I love your idea to do the tea ceremony, especially pairing it with the energy of Gemini, because Gemini is the natural worrier. I want to say R because I have Gemini moon, but it's like the natural disposition is to worry. So, as an antidote to that, to aid us in Gemini season, having this tea ceremony where you're talking about being super present and just enjoying down to the minute details, that sounds really, really comforting with Gemini energy.
Totally. Well, I know you were going to ask me later, but I have a Sagittarius moon, so I'm ready to jump into this chaos.
And you'll get to next week. Next week is the full moon in Sagittarius. And that's also on an eclipse.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I just still feel like scarred by the start of the eclipses last June.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That is fair. Last summer was chaotic is a good word for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was calling it seismic for a while. The eclipse was seismic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for better or worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it all depends on, like we're again, right? You're not able to always control everything, but you can control, what you do with that energy and how you refocus it and, and there'll be a group of us to do so, which is exciting. I love holding circles for that reason because everything that you do is amplified through the circle.
Absolutely. And we have such a supportive group. It's good vibes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so you already told me. So I know you're a Scorpio sun and you just said you're Sagittarius moon.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Capricorn rising?
I absolutely am. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I am indeed.
I think that really came through in the beginning. Very cool. Do you know if you have any Gemini in your chart? Just out of curiosity.
There's a little bit of Virgo here and there, but I was raised by a Gemini. My mother is a Gemini, very strong Gemini. So I have a lot of that influence on me.
Well, one Gemini thing that I heard come through what you were saying is when you were talking about being a better neighbor. I was like, that's the essence of Gemini right there. Because Gemini is the neighbor. It's places that are close to you, like the neighborhood. And yeah, beautiful being a better neighbor feels really Gemini to me.
I love that.
So I think like we're pretty clear on what's going to go down June 11th. I'll still do an intro to Gemini so we can all geek out about Gemini. And I've got someone who's going to talk to us about the tarot cards. And then the rest of the time is going to be yours. And I'm just really looking forward to that. And you and I agreed to donate 20% from that ceremony to, do you want to tell us about the organization?
AFIRE is an organization that works largely around immigration issues here in Chicago, specifically for the Filipino community. And they've just done some really beautiful work, and I'm excited to hold a tea ceremony essentially in their honor. Oh, and something that we did also discuss was being able to all drink the same tea, possibly, and to have something like that. So I don't know if you want to talk about how we're offering that, what's the best way to get them, but I do have tea.
Awesome. So there will be an add-on on Eventbrite, so you can click that extra option, and Nina's going to send us tea. So all around the country, wherever we are located, for our virtual ceremony, we'll be drinking the same tea. I think that's really beautiful.
I'm very excited, and it is a lovely tea that was specifically put together by another spiritual herbalist, and it is designed to be a divination and full moon tea. So
Wow.
super special. I'm very excited to share it with everybody.
Oh, that's so cool. Um, yeah, oh my gosh. I'm just like bubbling with excitement right now. Cool. So why don't we go into, I have like two larger questions left. One is, can you tell us about some of your favorite like podcasts or TV shows, or just like what you've been into lately?
Ooh, okay. What have I been into lately? Let me think about this for a second. Let's see. Podcasts. So, I again am very much um, into intimate spaces, and I would say that a big passion of mine, particularly before the pandemic, but still during, is immersive theater. And I love immersive theater as, in case you don't know what it is, it's basically theater that interacts with the audience. Um, you are more than just the audience character. Oftentimes it means that you are um, interacted with by the actors, or that you can walk freely through the set, that it's designed to be fully immersive, these sorts of things. There's a lot of different levels of immersive theater. But I have really been enjoying how immersive theater has adapted to the pandemic, and it being more interactive over devices, whether that means this is an entire play that's happening via text message back and forth, or it is a play that is happening through a series of Zoom calls that bounce you from person to person, where you're having some kind of intimate encounter via Zoom, or if it means that it's just an audio play and um, you have props that are mailed to your house that you get to interact with, to bring you into the space through other senses. I've been very much into these things, and I can provide some links to different things like that, including some that I have worked on. Um, so yeah, that's been largely like some of my media interests as of late. But you know, a lot of them do turn into kind of like storytelly podcast types. There's a lot of those too. Um, but yeah, there's just a lot to be done with immersive theater in terms of, again, creating safe spaces for people to have intimate encounters and be vulnerable. And, it's really beautiful to see audiences find a space that they feel like they can talk, you know, that they can have an experience with, honestly, with themselves, more than with the actor, but to be able to confront your own self through theater is lovely.
You're always into such cool worlds. And like, I really appreciate you sharing that. I'm sure everyone's going to be super intrigued.
Which I cannot lie and say that has, nothing to do with wanting to get actual tea in everybody's hands, to increase this sort of, immersive experience, and to have it even more like we're all together, because if you and I were hosting something like this in Chicago, like I already know, we'd be in a circle, we'd be passing this teapot around, we'd have candles lit. I can see the entire thing. And so wanting to approximate that experience that you and I would host here, but through the ether, I think is more than possible.
Yeah, I hear the immersive theater part that you're bringing to the ceremony, and I think that's really cool and I appreciate it. So then my last question for you is just where can we find you?
Largely on the internet under the handle at Nina DNGR, across most social media platforms. Instagram is probably my most used spot, but yeah, you'll be able to find all of my other links from there, and I will, send you some things that you can put in the description too.
Cool. And hopefully we'll see everyone on June 11th.
Yes, please join us.
Thank you so much for your time, Nina.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm
Of
very excited.
course.